Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga, the story of Black and White. Last time, the Striaton City gym leaders had managed to track down one of the laboratories of Team Plasma and confronted the Shadow Triad, but were outmatched, only for the Swords of Justice, mainly at the behest of their newest recruit, Keldon, came in and helped out. The Shadow Triad had an ace up their sleeve, a secret weapon known as Genesect. It went on the attack, going after Keldeo, but the other swords took the hit and were petrified, sinking into the sea. Meanwhile, at the Pokemon League, as Black readies himself after managing to unleash Reshiram from the Lightstone, the League is interrupted by N's castle erupting from underneath the Pokemon League and surrounding it, with legions of Team Plasma's grunts storming out, with them hoisting the gym leaders on crucifixes outside of their castle. While a lot of the citizens that Black has met along the way go in order to try to help out, Black also sends in his other Pokemon as they face off against the remaining 7 sages. The Elite Four end up taking on Hoodman, who has the legendary weather trio, Landorus, Thundurus, and Tornado. All the while, Black and Reshiram continue to try to bond as they take on N and Zekrom, only just barely managing to get in a critical hit. But will it end up being enough? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, who's that Pokemon? Well, it's not even really that. It's just Zekrom vs. Reshiram Part 3. It's adventure number 62. Homecoming. After Reshiram manages to get in a major hit on Zekrom, the other trainers look on, and he's saying, "Oh, he did it!" Joff says, "Don't get too excited yet. At any rate, he does seem to be riding Reshiram without a problem now." Is it Dr. Logan, right? Yeah, Dr. Logan says, "I'm proud to be the one who oversaw his training." Chris says with tears in her eyes, "Yes. Alright, time to wrap this battle." As they continue to battle it out with the 7 Sages Pokemon to get to the gym leaders. Still more censoring with the crucifixion. Chris says, "We've almost made it to the secret location where the gym leaders are being held." It's not really secret, it's in plain view. What was the girl's name? Shoko. Says, "You can do it, Pat Rat." The sages say, "They're tough. I don't understand why these people are fighting against us." Josh says, "You don't? It's simple." Chris says, "We all want," and Josh says, "to live together with Pokemon." Andy chimes in saying, "I tried to earn the badges I needed to enter the Pokemon League this year, but I failed. And not for the first time. I still came here, though, because I wanted to watch the tournament. And I learned something. I'm never going to give up on my dreams. If I can't make it this year, I'll try again next year. The year after that. It's taking on challenges and training hard that makes my life meaningful. Not just winning. I need gym leaders to train with, and the Pokemon League to set an example of excellence. And that's my Pokemon's dream too. They don't need your so-called Pokemon liberation." The biker Jeremy says, "Same goes for me." Choka says, "Our Pokemon." And Trish says, "Choose to live with unskilled trainers like us of their own free will." They say, thinking back to when their Pokemon chose them over the Swords of Justice. Logan says, "We're all grown-ups who gave up our dreams, but our Pokemon helped us get our dreams back after meeting that boy." Chris says, "We're here to watch the boy who helped us fulfill his own dream here today. So we can't let you go on manipulating people into giving up their Pokemon and leaving them to fend for themselves in the wild. You won't defeat us." They storm in. Shoko says, "Let's do it, Princess." And Trish says, "Okay, Shoko." And as they go up against a Seismitoad and a Mungus and a Mandibuzz, I think, the Pat Rats knock them off their feet or off balancing. Shoko saying, "After you." And Trish has her, what was it called again? Heatmore. Use Flame Burst on the 3 of them, knocking them back. Shoko says, "Now," as her Pat Rat ascend up and free the gym leaders from their crucifixion. Now Getsus and the other sages are surrounded by the trainers and the freed gym leaders who are ready to get back in on the action. The sages say, "What? I had no idea such unenlightened commoners were capable of such thing." Jeremy says, "Unenlightened? Hey!" And he whispers over to Logan, "What does he mean by unenlightened?" Logan says, "They badly underestimated us." Lenora says, "Looks like you're beginning to show your true colors." Berg says, "They sure are, Lenora." And though Clay cheers, saying, "Whatever, I've been going stir crazy in captivity all this time. It's time to rumble." And he has his extra drill go after the Seven Sages Pokemon using Drill Run. Berg sends out his Leavanny and has it use Struggle Bug. I do remember that ability. Elise sends out her Zebstrika and has it use Wild Charge, while Skyla sends out her Swanna and has it use Hurricane. Meanwhile, back up in the sky, as Black and Reshiram look over the falling Zekrom, regains consciousness, much to the shock of Black and Reshiram, and it flies back up into the sky. Oh, it's like it's taking off. Black and Reshiram give chase. Black saying, "Wait," but something flies next to them. Oh, in their path. It's Chantal's Golurk with Marshall and too many names, overload. Marshall and Caitlin on the back. Reshiram stops short, throwing Black off, who ends up flying onto Marshall on the back of the Golurk. Black says, "Ow, Marshall?" Marshall says, "What are you doing, Black?" Black says, "That's my line." Marshall says, "Thunderous, Tornadus, and Landorus disappeared while we were fighting. We're trying to find them." Caitlin questions, "Did your Musharna return to you?" Black says, "Huh?" Chantal says, "We noticed it floating around the stadium when we were getting ready for the Elite Four battles." Caitlin says, "I could tell right away that it was your Buna. It seemed nervous about seeing you again, but I told it not to worry and to find you as soon as it could." "Oh, the reason it left you before was because it wanted to find an energy source, to be exact. It wanted to evolve very badly. I gave it a moonstone to help it along." Black says, "So that's why. It wasn't because of me." "Oh, okay. Oh, Caitlin even coming in handy there. I just handed a moonstone over to it. I didn't know that. Huh. Oh, they evolve with a moonstone. I didn't know that's how they evolve." Caitlin says also, "Anna and Zekrom have gone into that castle. Follow them in there." She points to the top floor of a castle. Well, actually, her Gothitelle, which I actually like Gothitelle. But what I don't love is my camera cutting out. Gotta love that. And thankfully it wasn't for a long time, but that's still kind of annoying. Need a new camera. But we finally find where White is. I guess inside of the castle? Okay, with, what are their names? Anthea and Concordia. Okay. White begins to stir, saying, "Where am I?" Anthea says, "Oh, good." And Concordia says, "You've finally woken up. I'm Concordia. I'm Anthea. And this is N's room." Oh, that's kind of wild to be in N's room. Like, questionable behavior. And also we got White Superior. It pops out with White shock saying, "N's room?" Anthea says, "Wait, we won't hurt you." Concordia says, "But a man brought you here." White questions why. Concordia says, "We don't know. We have no idea what goes on in his mind." Anthea says, "Maybe." Oh, and we see Gigi poking her head around the corner. White says, "Gigi." It's hard to tell who's talking, but I'm going to assume that this is Concordia saying, "And release all the Pokemon he lived with before his final battle." And I think Anthea says, "Temple, Gurdor, Archops, Darmanitan, Zora, and that Tepig as well. But the Tepig came back." White looks around saying, "You said this was N's room? What are you doing here?" Anthea says, "Oh, we take care of N." Concordia says, "N grew up in the company of Pokemon who were mistreated by humans." Anthea says, "All by himself in this very room." White questions what? They explain, Concordia saying, "Since he was a small child, N has had the special ability to hear the voices of Pokemon." Anthea says, "He had no family in Pokemon. And no, family and people thought he was crazy." Concordia says, "So Getsus took him took N in? Anthea says, Getsis adopted N as his son. White says, then Getsis made sure N only heard the voices of abused Pokemon year after year? That does sound like a bit... like, from that angle, it's just like, oh yeah, that's an obvious manipulation. White starts to well up with tears, and Anthea and Concordia start to nod to each other. Concordia says, when N left his Pokemon go free, he told his Tepig. And we see the flashback of N talking with Tepig. Whether you keep fighting Pokemon battles or go back to performing in show business is up to you, all of you. I want you to know that if you meet a person you really like, there's nothing wrong with staying with them. See, that shows. It's the side of N's, argument that you don't really get to see. It's just like, yes, we don't like you putting the Pokemon in Pokeballs and all that because it doesn't feel natural. Something about that seems wrong, which I can understand an argument being made for that. But it's just like, there's also the whole thing of, but if your Pokemon actually like being with the trainers, then let them. Like, that's the big argument right there. That's the catch-22 of all of this. It's just like, well, if the Pokemon actually like being with the trainers, just let them stay. Like, that's why you have regulations and rules and people who call out when a Pokemon is actually being abused or something like that. Like, yeah, cool. Unleash your Pokemon into the world and all that good stuff if you feel like they'd have a better time just being free. But some creatures, once they get a taste of, domesticated life, they're not really looking to leave that. Well, they don't want to, some creatures don't actually want to hunt and forage and all that stuff, and this food can be just brought to them. Now, an argument could be made for that being unnatural. It robs some of the creatures of their ability to forage and hunt and do for themselves, and it can lead to a lot of problems and issues and yada yada yada. But I don't know, if a creature's not being abused, I don't see where the harm is. Then again, I also eat bacon, so I feel like that kind of nullifies a lot of arguments that I could make about how I feel about animals. Regardless, Reshiram comes bursting into the castle like the Kool-Aid Man to confront N and Zekrom. Black just ready to go, and N still just having that stoic look upon his face. Black dismounts Reshiram, saying, oh no. Black dismounts, and Reshiram and Zekrom face off. But Concordia and Anthea talking with White overlays the battle. I'll assume it's Anthea saying, if you meet a person you really like, there's nothing wrong with staying with them. White says, N really said that? Concordia says, after being rejected by so many people and guesses his brainwashing, and truly believed it was his responsibility to liberate Pokemon. See, that's the part of Anthea and Concordia that I don't fully understand. Like, who are you two exactly? That's the one thing I don't really know. Why are you two wrapped up in all this? I know that they're fairly young and we're kind of made to be, I don't know, N's caretakers or whatever, but why? Was there a specific reason it was them? I'll assume Anthea says, Getsis thought N was so focused on this ideal of Pokemon liberation that he wouldn't be influenced by the outside world. So after his coronation, Getsis allowed N to go out and proselytize as the king of Team Plasma. Proselytize? Huh. That's a word I've never heard before. But that's when N discovered the truth, and it's shown Black working with his Pokemon, namely Galvantula. That specific encounter changed his mind. Way to go, Galvantula. Good stuff, buddy. Concordia says, an unsolvable puzzle. Actually, this puzzle was simple to decipher. Anthea says, but N didn't like the answer, so at first he refused to accept it. Concordia says, it was a puzzle he didn't want to solve because it contradicted everything he had been taught and believed up until that point. It's N. Oh, when Tepig attacked, N did read Tepig's thought, and Tepig's thoughts read, this person really gets me. I want to be with him forever and share my life with him. Cut back to outside, the gym leader's just plowing through a Team Plasma's Pokemon. Choka says, hey, where are the 7 sages? And he says, huh? Trish looks around saying, they're gone. Well, Jeremy holding up some grunts by the scruff of their neck saying, I must have escaped by hiding amongst those Team Plasma grunts. Meanwhile, we see Getsis sneaking away into the bowels of the castle. Mysterious right up into the end, huh? I guess we don't get to see the real Getsus until the next story arc. Meanwhile, we cut to outside, where Hoodman is flying around on his Kling Klang, while Grimsley gives chase with his Bisharp. I got that right? God, there's so many Pokemon in this chapter. Yeah, Kling Klang and Bisharp. Okay, yeah. Hoodman notices he's being followed and has Kling Klang use Gear Shift. As Kling Klang gets at the ready, he tells it to use Gear Grind, and it goes after Bisharp and Grimsley. Bisharp manages to knock them away while Grimsley dodges. Grimsley says, "Now, Bisharp." And I think Bisharp goes for the attack on Hoodman, but Kling Klang manages to defend. Hoodman says, "Turns out you're not like they say you are, Grimsley. I heard you only care about yourself, but it looks like you care about others after all." Grimsley gives a shrug, saying, "What they say is true. I'm only doing this for me, because I can't stand it anymore." Hoodman questions, "What do you mean?" Grimsley says, "Well, for the past few months, my table's been shaking. Because of all the goings on in the castle Team Plasma built beneath us." Oh yeah, I was told by Steven on Patreon, the castle was just built underneath the league. It doesn't move underground, which I guess that makes more sense. But it's still kind of like, hey, you were building this underneath the Pokemon League this entire time? That's insane. Grimsley brandishes a card and a wicked smile, saying, "It's ruining my card and roulette game. How are we supposed to play on an unsteady surface?" So there you have. I feel like that's full of BS. Now let's see what's under that heavy hood of yours. As Bisharp goes in on the attack. Hoodman seems to activate some kind of booster, blasting past Bisharp. Oh wait, no! He has a Genesect under his hood. Man, Genesect just appearing everywhere. Grimsley says nervously, "What speed, incredible. It didn't use teleport. It was just incredibly fast. It was riding a Kling Klang until a moment ago, but just now, who was that?" Okay, so I guess Genesect just came in, caught Hoodman, and took off. Like, my god. Insane. Oh, Gigi's just playing around in N's room, doing all these tricks and movements and performances, and does this perfect little landing. Concordia says, "Oh my." Anthea says, "How adorable." As Gigi comes up to White, White kneels down, saying, "Oh, I see you still want to be a performer, but you're N's Pokemon now. So I'll write up a contract for you to perform with BWHC. Does that work for you?" Gigi gives a nod, and White and Gigi take off, saying, "Good, now let's go find Black and N." So she still acknowledges Gigi as N's Pokemon. That's interesting. I mean, there was no technical transfer. I wonder how that all worked. I mean, N would have released her. He did release her. I wonder if Gigi could be caught in a Pokeball again. Would she even want to be? I don't know. That's interesting. Put her in a luxury ball this time. Well, back to the battle. Zekrom slaps the taste out of Reshiram. Like, Reshiram got a bruise on his face, too. Black tends to Reshiram, saying, "Nuts. It still has the strength to keep on fighting. If only I could hit it one more time." But then Black seems to notice something. Two? Zekrom? Yeah. What the heck? Yeah, Black questions two Zekrom and looks to the two of them, and even he's like, "What the? Is it a mirror? What? Or is it a statue?" Because the other Zekrom isn't moving, but it's caught the attention of the main Zekrom. But Black says, "Now, Reshiram!" And Reshiram uses Dragon Pulse, and it hits both N and Zekrom. God dang. Zekrom falls to the ground, and as N falls too, he says, "Why? I don't understand." Oh, the other Zekrom panics, seeing N hurt, and reforms into Zoroa. Black questioningly calls out to Zoroa. As N looks to the Zoroa who's pouting, he says, "Why are you here? I set you free. Why did you come back?" The Black approaches, saying, "Isn't it obvious? Zoro wants to help you. Don't you get it?" And says, "Yes, I do now. Zoro wants to be with me. That's why I came back. You and Gigi both. But you shouldn't have transformed into Zekrom. That was naughty," he says, picking up Zoro and hugging it, with Black smiling. Aw, that's actually kind of cute. I do like that. I'm starting to kind of realize that maybe the very stoic nature of And might have just been that he was just very constantly lost in thought. What might have seemed like a certainty in his beliefs was him still kind of grappling with a lot of the things that he's experienced. He was raised believing one thing, but with everything he's seen out in the world, it's just like, but a lot of people, despite how they, contain their Pokemon, their Pokemon don't seem to always mind so much. There are some Pokemon who do mind, and the fact that N was surrounded by Pokemon who had been abused by humans really kind of says something, but I think at the same time, by them being around N, that might have also kind of healed a lot of their mistrust in humans, because they ended up liking N. Well, at least a good few of them. I can't imagine that all of those Pokemon that he had with them didn't like him. I wonder. Alright, Zekrom versus Reshiram Part 4. It's adventure number 63. The Power of Dream. On top of Chantal's Golurk, using Gothitelle, Caitlin says, I found them. There they are. They gesture to the sky, where we see Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus. Chantal questions, I guess that story about them being able to fly at 200 miles per hour is true, huh? Marshall says, we keep losing them in the clouds. We are the Elite Four. Playing tag is undignified. I'll take care of Landorus. Caitlin says, I'll support you with telekinesis. Marshall brings out Sock? Yep, that's Sock. I got it right on the first try. Marshall brings out Sock, and with Caitlin's telekinesis, they make their way up to Landorus. Marshall has Sock use Karate Chop on Landorus. Get him right in the face. Caitlin tells Chantal, I'll take on Thundurus. As she's lifted into the air by her Gothitelle, Chantal says, and I'll do an up-close and personal interview with Tornadus, taking off on her Golurk. Caitlin has Gothitelle use Psyshock, while Chantal has Golurk use Heavy Slam, each of them taking on one of the Weather Trio. As Grimsley watches the clash in the sky, he thinks to himself, Marshall and the others are over there. He then spots Hoodman, having, I guess, made his way back or making his way upward. Grimsley thinks, what's he doing? As Hoodman observes the other Elite Four members taking on the Weather Trio, he says, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The three legendary Pokemon elimination emotions have been heightened by the fierce attacks from the Elite Four. That should draw out their hidden power. And now that they're provoked, I might be able to force them to transform out of their incarnate form. I'll give it a try, he says, bringing out a mirror. Grimsley sees this and questions what he's doing. Meanwhile, back inside the castle, and hugs Zora while leaning against the down Zekrom, while a tired Reshiram and Black watch. Black thinks to himself, he hasn't said a thing for quite a while now. Then he notices, oh, is he asleep? Must be nice to be able to relax now that everything's settled. But suddenly behind Zekrom enters Black's other Pokemon. Black says, hey, is the battle over? He goes over to Musharna saying, you know what, Musha? I had no idea you'd flown off to train on your own. I heard you were worried because my dream had changed. You worked really hard to evolve, didn't you? As Musharna cuddles against Black, he says, we need each other, don't we? It was your mist that helped me look inside Sharon's heart. Cien, was a bond between us after all. But I guess I didn't need to tell him that. He can sense the feelings of Pokemon. Suddenly, a voice calls out, Gatsis, saying, why are you here? Absolutely pitiful. And you call yourself a member of the Harmonia family. Black says, Gatsis, what do you mean by family? Gatsis, flying down on his Hydreigon, says exactly what it sounds like. That pitiful young man on the floor there is my adopted son, Natural Harmonia Gropius. Which I can't get over that name. His name's Natural. Then again, I criticize the name, but just look at any of Musk's children. Black says, so Getz is the leader of the 7 Sages of Team Plasma. Is N's father? Getz says, I see no reason to keep you in the dark any longer. I had N pursue a singular idea, so he could turn the Dark Stone back into the legendary Pokemon Zekrom, so that Team Plasma would be able to rule the world. Black questions, rule the world? Getsus gives a bow, saying, the liberation of other people's Pokemon, That is my and Team Plasma's idea, but at first we couldn't convince people to accept it or do as we said. However, common minds are easily influenced by authority and power. Black says, that is why we needed a hero, needed a king, a hero, and a legendary Pokemon. Oh, I think that's supposed to be Getsus saying that, but the speech bubble's coming out of Black. But Getsus says, well done, son. Zekrom responded to your idea and returned to the state of the Black Dragon-type Pokemon. The champion Alder was defeated. The gym leaders were captured. We took over the Pokemon League Stadium, and all of Unova witnessed how powerless they were in comparison to Team Plasma. Consequently, they decided there must be something to our message, because ignorant people think might is right, and now they are ready and willing to bend to our authority and follow our every command. We knew we could manipulate people into following Team Plasma and accepting our supposed ideal. And way to give it all up, man. Yes, everything was going according to plan. Until my fool of a son decided to battle the hero of truth and Reshiram. It was as if he wanted to prove he was really a hero. And to top it off, and lost. But I won't let my master plan be thwarted. All I need to do to proceed is get rid of this inconvenient truth. Black shouts, what do you mean? Getsus says, isn't it obvious? I'm going to get rid of you. Hydreigon. Burn him to a crisp. And Hydreigon unleashes a powerful flame from his 3 mouths that start to surround Black. As Black shields himself, he says, you can't defeat me that easily. Getsus says, you think not? Reshiram doesn't have the strength to fight anymore. Black says, true, but Reshiram isn't my only Pokemon. Black tells Caracosta to use to extinguish that fire. While he tells Emboar to crush Hydreigon. But suddenly, something strikes Caracosta. Strikes it hard. Black looks on in shock. Oh, because of the electric type. It gets this Electros. That shocks, chomps on the Caracosta's head and starts to shock it. In comes Getsus's, Seismitoad. And, Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus. There we go. Cofagrigus. Seismitoad blasts, Emboar with water? Sludge? I don't really know. Black says Getsus has a lot of powerful Pokemon. Braviary tries to help out Caracosta, but, Electros is just really go to town on Caracosta. Black says Costa and Brave are up against Electra. Bo is facing off against Seismitoad. As Seismitoad slams Emboar's face into the ground. Oh, Cofagrigus has just got Musharna on the ropes. Well, Galvantula is surrounded by flames. Black says Musha is fighting Cofagrigus, and Tula can't do a thing in the middle of all these flames. Guess his Pokemon types all have the advantage over mine. Getsus laughs. You've interfered with my plans so often that, naturally, I spent some time gathering information about. Black says, you did your homework all right. What's with this fire? It keeps moving to block my path like it's alive. Getsus says, these flames will erase you and your Pokemon, together with the inconvenient truth. Black questions, what is this inconvenient truth you keep babbling about? Getsus questions, can't you tell? It's the fact that you defeated N. I need N to be the undisputed king of Team Plasma, a figurehead who unifies the hearts of the common people. No one must know that the king they admire is fallible and has been defeated. Luckily for me, the decisive end of the battle between Zekrom and Reshiram was carried out inside this castle. The only ones who know its outcome are us 3. Black questions, so you're going to lie to everyone? Getsus says, of course. I'll tell our subjects that N defeated the strongest trainer of them all. He beat Alder and then claimed victory in battle against the legendary white dragon-type Pokemon. That story will make him even more of a hero. The rabble will be impressed. They'll see that their king, the leader of Unova, has a deep understanding of Pokemon, one they can never hope to attain. So they'll listen to his message and release and even drive away their Pokemon. More and more Pokemon will be set free. If anyone dares to resist, we'll use our followers to create laws to crush their protests. In the end, The only people left with any Pokemon will be us, Team Plasma. And that is my idea. Black questions, what the? That's totally different from the ideal N was talking about. Does N know this was your true plan all along? Getsus smiles. Of course not. He's nothing but a front. Black grows angry, thinking, N, you didn't hear all this, did you? You're still out cold, right? I really hope you didn't hear how your father tricked you, how he used you. Black cries out, Getsus! I'm really gonna beat you now. Now, think. He sees Braviary still trying to deal with Electros on top of Caracosta. Black thinks Electros is fighting two of my Pokemon. That's the only chance I've got. Calls out, Brave, I need you to break free somehow. Braviary powers through and manages to slam into Electros, downing it and freeing Caracosta. Caracosta sees an opportunity and, uses some kind of stone attack on Cofagrigus, freeing Musharna. Musharna clomps down on Black's head, and Black thinks, I can't lose. If I lose now, he'll trick the people of Unova, just like he tricked Anne. There must be a way, some way to defeat him. There has to be. I just have to make my mind go totally blank. Information is flowing into my head. White noise coalesces with Black, and so that's how I can turn this battle around. Wonder what he sees. Black calls out, Musha, the sun. Shoot the sun? What? Musharna attacks the sun. Oh, right. That's the flame that kept pursuing him. Right, I completely forgot they were trying to get a Volcarona. I'm like, attack the sun? Wait, what? I'm like, I did think that when Black said, oh man, it's like these flames are alive, they keep chasing me. Like, okay, so Getsus must have like another Pokemon waiting in the wings who's producing the flame. I didn't realize it was this one. Black pulls out his Pokedex saying there was another Pokemon hiding in the setting sun. Jeez. The sun Pokemon, Volcarona. The Pokedex reads, Volcarona, the sun Pokemon. When volcanic ash darkened the atmosphere, it is said that Volcarona's fire provided a replacement for the sun. Black says, this isn't Hydreigon's fire after all. The ember scales from Volcarona's wings are catching fire the moment they fall to the ground. That's why these flames keep following us wherever we go. So Brave, use Whirlwind to blast the burning scales away. Braviary does just that. Black then says, Volcarona is a bug and fire type Pokemon. Costa, Stone Edge. Musha, Hidden Power. Brave, Skydrop, which it uses on Cofagrigus. Tula, X-Scissor. Bow, Flare Blitz. And they all just go in on all of Getsus's Pokemon. So Caracosta uses Stone Edge on Volcarona. Emboar uses Flare Blitz on Electros. Braviary uses Skydrop on Cofagrigus. Musharna uses Hidden Power on Seismitoad. And Galvantula uses X-Scissor on Hydreigon, and all of Getsus's Pokemon fall. Black then overhears Getsus questioning, Volcarona, how could Volcarona be so easily defeated? Legend has it that Volcarona replaced the sun when volcanic ashes darkened the atmosphere. I even handed a Larvistar to one of the Shadow Triad when I found its egg at Relic Castle. Black calls out, you're not going anywhere, Getsus. He tells Caracosta to use Stone Edge to trap Getsus. Black tells him, this is where your Team Plasma ideal comes to an end. Oh, okay. Meanwhile, outside, as the Elite Four continue to back the Weather Trio up against each other, Hoodman pulls out a mirror, turns away from the battle, and catches the reflection of the Weather Trio. Hoodman says, you can see them in the mirror, but they won't transform. I know that a mirror is the key. And maybe not this mirror. Hoodman then notices something saying, oh, it looks like Getsus has been defeated. Time to call it quits then. Besides, I have a mirror to find. He recalls the Weather Trio. Marshall shouting, what? Hoodman says, sorry, can't stay. However, this has been most enjoyable. I'm sure we'll meet again someday. Till then. And he just takes off at lightning fast speed. Black then says, now what should I do with Getsus? Hand him over to Drayden? Suddenly, see, the word balloons are mixed up. It sounds like White says boss and Black says his own name. But it should be White calling out softly, Black, and Black responding, boss! as he sees White and Gigi in the doorway. White comes rushing over, grabbing Black's hand. Aw, that's so cute. Alright, and the last chapter of this volume and this story arc and this video is Zekrom vs. Reshiram Part 5. Adventure number 64, A Difficult Party. Black and White look out of the castle. Black says, let's go down. The ones we really need to free are those who have been bound by Team Plasma's abuse of the words freedom and liberation. But they're both startled as N sets Zora down, saying, could you wait a moment? Black, gets in between N and White's questioning N, but N addresses Gigi, saying, you're with them too, Gigi. White says, yes, the hoodman put me in your room. That's where we were reunited. She lowers Black's arm, giving him a nod, and says, I see. You were able to learn what Gigi wants? White kneels down and smiles at Gigi, saying, yes. After experiencing Pokemon battles, Gigi made her choice. She then looks to N with a smile, saying, and I have you to thank for that, N. You helped me hear Gigi's voice. N seems to be startled by this. He pauses and then says, I never would have thought we could have a relaxing conversation like this. It's strange. Maybe this is what I've been longing for all along. Black has what's the word? Lamentous look on his face, while White shows a lot of concern for N calling out to him. But Black raises his hat. With a bright smile, he says, works for me. I'm glad we can talk to each other like this now. Looks like all's well that ends well. He then looks to the sky, saying, the first time I battled with you in Accumula Town, Musha ate your dream and puffed it out through its mist. Inside the mist, I could see your gentle and peaceful dream. It's probably because I saw your dream that, even though at first I felt I could never forgive you, somewhere in my heart, I knew you were a good guy. A really good guy who always only wants the best for Pokemon. That was one truth I was sure of. And doesn't respond. But then he gets up, saying, I began having doubts when I fought you in Accumula Town. That doubt continued to grow the more I traveled around Unova. I fought you to test my resolve, to channel my ideal into Zekrom to see how righteous it was. I wanted to face you as a hero. But although I can hear Pokemon's voices, I never truly understood them like you do. I was never a match for you to begin with. It's because he didn't have enough experience to fully understand where some of the Pokemon were coming from, probably. Honestly, I'm starting to think that maybe N believed that there was some kind of manipulation behind the Pokeball, which I could understand. And you catch a Pokemon, put it in a Pokeball, and suddenly it listens to you. It's like, something about that doesn't seem right. But then turns away, saying, forgive me, Black. Now I need to go and figure out what's next. And with a bit of a smile, he says goodbye. Suddenly, Zekrom raises its wings. Black calls out to N, and as both Black and the Zoroa chase after, N takes off on Zekrom. The gym leaders, the trainers, the Elite Four, Drayden and Iris, Black and White, they all watch as N takes off into the setting sun. And through the crack between the rocks that surround him and imprison him, Ghetsis watches as well. Suddenly, Reshiram begins to roar. White says, Reshiram is roaring so loudly. Black says, you're right. It must feel like it lost half of its soul. But suddenly, Black and White and Gigi start to be pulled towards Reshiram. As White picks up Gigi, she questions, what the? Black says, we're being pulled over to Reshiram. But Black seems to realize something. He gets in between Reshiram and White, saying, stand back, boss. It feels a lot like the time Reshiram was awakened from the Lightstone. Everything that got released in that moment is being sucked back inside. I guess Reshiram's going to turn back into the stone that has finished his battle against Zekrom. We need to back up and fast. Ghetsis suddenly says, splendid. You two will get dragged in and turned to stone. White calls out to Black, and Black says, don't worry, boss. Hey, Black peeks in, saying, hey, Ghetsis, you're frustrated, aren't you? Because you can't do anything to me. Ghetsis says, frustrated? On the contrary, I'm ecstatic. The hero who once stood in my way is providing me with the perfect means to rid myself of him. Suddenly something pulls Black upward and towards Reshiram. White calls out to Black, and Black starts to fuse with Reshiram. We see that BEM is next to Ghetsis, and that's how Black was pulled towards Reshiram. Black calls out, Ghetsis, how did you get out? Ghetsis says with a smile, I have friends. This is truly gratifying, and this will be the last time we shall ever meet, hero of truth. BM then teleports Getsus away. White calls out to Black, and Black says, "Stay back. Don't come near me, or you'll get dragged in as well." White turns away saying, "Hold on, I'll get help." Black says, "Boss, I haven't broken my promise, you know." White questions, "What are you talking about?" Black says, "You've forgotten. Remember what you said in Castelia City? If I ever made it into the Pokemon League, I should wear this." Black unzips his jacket and reveals a little bib-like thing, an advertisement for the Pokemon BW agency. White says, "Our company logo," and then she remembers. She says, "You remembered." Black says, "Of course I remembered. I did some research and figured out that the best time to put it on would be after winning the tournament that earns me the right to face the Elite Four. That's when I'd be surrounded by the media. I was going to whip off my jacket and shout, 'For TV dramas, movie commercials, stage shows, and print ads, you can always count on BW Agency.'" But Black says solemnly, "But I messed up. Did I work hard enough to pay you back for the equipment I damaged? Did I?" Well, before he could finish, he and Reshiram sealed within the Lightstone, leaving behind a stunned White. White walks towards the Lightstone, saying, "You don't have to worry about paying me back anymore. After all, you..." But as she reaches for it, the Lightstone floats off into the sky. White calls out, "Wait, don't go." But as it flies out of reach, White falls to her knees, crying out for Black. We see outside of the castle a ways away. Hoodman is watching with BEM. Hoodman says, "Pokemon League was quite an interesting event. I don't know why I couldn't get that out. I had the opportunity to face numerous trainers from Unova, as well as battle the Elite Four. And it's all thanks to you, Getsus. I'm truly grateful, my friend." Getsus on the cross transceiver says, "Not at all. You helped me with my plans too." Hoodman questions, "By altering people's memories, you mean?" "Yep, I thought so. That was an interesting project. Several people freed their Pokemon because their memories had been altered by BEM. But it seems that others freed their Pokemon because they were persuaded by Team Plasma's ideals." Oh, it went deeper than that. Holy crap. Next, those who lacked confidence in their bonds with their Pokemon began freeing their Pokemon. Getsus says, "I hope to maintain this friendly alliance between us." Hoodman says, "Gladly, as long as you don't interfere with my research." Then that Hoodman takes off his mask and hood, saying, "As a matter of fact, our alliance will be a boon to me as well, for I am researching how to bring out the maximum power of Pokemon. That is my ultimate goal." And thus Colress stands revealed. I mean, it wasn't hard to pinpoint once because he kept talking about research, and there's only one person in the show, well, in the games, that I know just talks about research ad nauseum, but almost with a delightful glee kind of situation. He's so detached from so much that is happening. Like, he'll do research at the expense of pretty much everyone around him. Oh, so this is how it happens. Okay, so, truth be told, I know a lot of things. I knew Black was going to end up in the Lightstone. That is something that, unfortunately, was already kind of spoiled for me. I didn't know how it happened. That's the thing. I knew nothing about how it happened. The only thing I knew was that Black ends up sealed in the Lightstone, which is why my thing of why is it that everyone ends up sealed in something like stone, Lightstone, in a magical coma for months? You know, these things keep happening to the protagonists in the series. I swear to God, I'll be shocked if the mangaka has not made a joke about this at some point. But I also know two things about the main characters in the next story arc. As essentially their occupations. So, yeah, I already know who this is. But a young plasma grunt who I don't assume we'll ever see again, who looks very prominent, says, is talking to her mother, with her mother saying, "You have to get ready to go. We can't stay here anymore." The young grunt says, "Why can't we stay with them, Mommy? These Pokemon have all been freed from bad people. they're Master N's special friends. And I thought we were only gonna see Pokemon from this region, but there's a Houndoom. Just chilling. All right then. Well, her mother says no. Concordia steps in saying, of course. The mother says, Concordia, Athena, or Anthea. Concordia says, thank you so much for taking care of these Pokemon. Anthea says, which of these Pokemon is your best friend? The young grunt says, this one, and points to a little fungus. I think that's the one she points to. Yeah, fungus. And the fungus gives a wink. It jumps onto the young grunt's head, and Anthea hands over a locket saying, then I want you to keep it. Take this too. The young grunt says, pendant? As she opens up, there's a picture of N. The young grunt says, it's Master N's. And it's either Anthea or Concordia. Was Anthea who spoke last, so I'll say Concordia, who says, take good care of it until he returns, okay? And all of the grunts leave the castle, setting out into the world. The star pattern of a buffalont appearing in the sky. Okay, that's weird. And that's where it ends. To be continued. In Black 2 and White 2. I have to admit that the way that wrapped up was a little too fast. It just suddenly end. Like, wait, what? That ending just comes the frig out of nowhere. I mean, it's shocking, but I will admit, it's in the same vein as the end of the Fire Red and Leaf Green storyline. The only problem is there's certain elements of that storyline that never feels like it gets a complete payoff. Like, oh, they got petrified because Surd unleashed Darkrai from the Lightstone, and because of Darkrai interacting with Mewtwo, it petrified them. How? What? How? And are we never going to address the Darkrai she unleashed? Is that never going to come back into the picture? I mean, technically, Darkrai did come back into the picture, but is it the same Darkrai that was just running around by the time we got to the Sinnoh region? It just, man, that just really threw me. And then Surd, I'm still salty about Surd's whole storyline not really reaching a decent enough conclusion. I mean, Team Plasma ultimately escapes at the end of Platinum, but we never addressed Surd after that point, and it still boggles the mind that it's just like, guys, what? And it feels like so many things just kind of, I don't know. I need Black 2 and White 2 is going to have to do some heavy lifting, because I knew two things about the protagonists, one each, and it essentially regards their past, or previous occupations / current occupation, and that's about it. I know nothing else about Black 2 and White 2. So in terms of the games, I know about N, I know about Ghetsis, and that's mostly just what you already know. Eventually N comes back, and Ghetsis kind of just drops the facade of being, altruistic cult leader personality. That's about it. Other than on the gym leaders, there's a change up in terms of gym leaders. I know about Chirin. I know about Bianca. I know about Marlon. I know about Roxy. I think that's about it. Yeah, it's not a lot. I know very sparse elements. Kind of like for this, there's certain things that I know because of stuff that I've seen for the games, because of the channels I watch and all that, and the games have been out for long enough. Like, I like Pokemon well enough to just be like, okay, I'll keep up with certain elements here or there, but I usually don't look too far into the conclusion of certain things. I don't know what ultimately happens to Ghetsis, and it's the thing of, like, Looker wasn't even really involved too much after a certain point, because he wasn't even there to try to arrest. Did he arrest any of the 7 sages? That's my thing too. Like, we had this big tease of Looker ending up in Unova and finally got the payoff, but I feel like we didn't dedicate enough time to it after a certain point. So I have to assume that because of certain elements, Looker ends up being a lot more involved in the next story arc. That's about it. An unsatisfying conclusion, but that's by design, because our main character is now sealed within the Lightstone and it just floats off. I didn't know that was gonna happen. How do we get him out of there? That's such a bummer. Like, man, that is such a bummer. Because I also know that there's a big thing about in Black 2 and White 2, the protagonists of those games can go to the protagonist of the previous game's house, and their mom mistakes the protagonist for Black 2 and White 2 for the protagonist of Black and White, and just talks about them being out on the journey and nobody's seen them in a while. So that might be the impetus for why this happened to Black here. But man, that is such a bummer. You know, Black and White have this really sweet relationship, and just, that's rough. That's rough. I do look forward to more of N's journey and how he develops as a character. Can't wait for Getchus to finally get his comeuppance. I don't like that he got a W on that one. And yeah, he got a defeat for the most part, but I don't like him getting any semblance of a victory there. And I'm interested to see what happens with these random grunts. Yeah. And I doubt there'll be any importance to any of these grunts, but you never know. We've had important grunts before. But I mean, the battle was fun. You know, everybody kind of got in on it at the end. Then again, what happened to the Shadow Triad? They just kind of, Genesec just kind of shows up. And then there's the fact that, you know, what happens with the Swords of Justice, and like that's the thing. There's so many unanswered plot threads that you better wrap it up in Black 2 and White 2, man. You better wrap it up, please. Like, if you couldn't go anywhere with it, I wish you would have wrapped it up here, because oh boy. And I know that the next story arc isn't really going to be about battling gyms. At least I don't think so, from what I know about the protagonist, so I guess we'll see. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I hope to see you in the next one. So then, take care. Bye-bye.